Since 1950, the average new American house has grown from under 1,000 square feet to more than 2,400. So why are we still buying countertop racks, rolling carts, plastic bins, and drawer organizers to replace Jobs' old kitchens built directly into the walls? A wet plate slides into a cabinet above the sink and drains by itself. Water runs down a porcelain drainboard instead of pulling around a plastic rack. A gas oven continues cooking after the flame goes out. During a party, every dirty pan disappears behind one closed door. Some of these ideas were genuinely brilliant. Others have been polished by nostalgia until they shine brighter than they ever did. A few would be dangerous to copy without modern upgrades. I'm Alex. And when we started working on this episode, we expected a pleasant tour through Grandma's kitchen. Instead, we found more than a century of industrial psychology, food science, advertising, gender politics, and one Finnish cabinet that quietly makes many modern kitchens look badly designed. Later, I'll show you which forgotten feature eliminates hand-drying dishes without electricity. We'll separate useful bread and vegetables. We'll examine the oven designed to cook after being switched off. And we'll explain why a century-old sink is evidence of durability, but not proof that everything made in 1925 was better. Then we'll reconstruct the hidden room that may solve the central problem of the open-plan kitchen. The whole story rests on one principle: specialization at the point of use. Put the object where the task happens. Put the drainboard beside the water. Put flour beside the mixing surface. Put waste near the chopping area. Put serving dishes between the kitchen and dining room. Obvious, right? Yet modern kitchens often optimize for the photograph. Long symmetrical cabinets look clean on a property listing, but symmetry does not care why you peel potatoes. The vintage approach was closer to user interface design. Fewer clicks, shorter navigation, and no essential tool hidden behind 3 menus and a decorative island. First, an honesty disclaimer. A Hoosier cabinet from the 1910s, a Frankfurt Kitchen from 1926, a Korean counter introduced in 1967, and a kitchen planning desk from the late 20th century do not belong to one historical moment. Nostalgia has bundled them into the same starter pack. The first great attempt to organize kitchen movement was the Hoosier cabinet, pronounced Hoosier. Before continuous built-in cabinetry became normal, it was a freestanding preparation center. It generally combined bins, a flour sifter, utensil storage, specialized drawers, and a pull-out work surface. The Hoosier Manufacturing Company advertised. That was marketing, not the conclusion of a controlled ergonomic study. Nobody followed a homemaker with a vintage fitness tracker and issued a peer-reviewed step count. Still, the physical problem was real. Picture a kitchen in the 1910s. Flour sits across the room. The mixing bowl is somewhere else. Utensils occupy another cupboard. Every loaf of bread requires repeated crossings, and the same route is walked again tomorrow. The Hoosier cabinet put the whole baking workflow within arm's reach. It was less a cabinet than a domestic workstation. Its pull-out breadboard created temporary counter space without enlarging the room. That deserves a comeback, with one modern correction. Make the board removable for cleaning. A wooden surface that retracts into a dark cabinet can collect flour, crumbs, and moisture. The feature is clever. The inaccessible sourdough ecosystem behind it is not. This focus on movement was deliberate. In the 1910s, Christine Frederick brought scientific management into the home. She timed tasks and argued that kitchens should be arranged according to the sequence of work, not decorative symmetry. Her kitchen was treated like a production system, because domestic labor was production, even when nobody paid for it. Lillian Moller-Gilbreth, pronounced Gilbreth, pushed the idea further during the 1920s and 30s. Gebhard studied motion and adapted storage to the user, instead of requiring the user to adapt to the room. One needless reach looks trivial. Repeat it hundreds of times and it becomes fatigue. There is a catch. Frederick and appliance manufacturers promised that efficiency would reduce housework. Historian Ruth Schwartz-Cowan later argued that technology often changed the work rather than removing it. Appliances raised standards. They brought commercially performed tasks into the home and left one person responsible for operating the new system. Both arguments can be right. A flour bin can reduce unnecessary steps without liberating anyone from baking. Better workflow removes particular motions. It does not automatically redistribute responsibility. Then, in 1926, Margaret Schutteliotsky, pronounced Margaret Schutteliotsky, designed the Frankfurt Kitchen for Ernst May's public housing program. Around 10,000 examples were installed. This was mass-produced kitchen architecture, not a bespoke luxury for someone who needed a second refrigerator for sparkling water. The room drew inspiration from railway dining car kitchens and time and motion research. It had labeled aluminium bins, purpose-positioned utensils, a removable waste drawer, and a fold-down ironing board. Every object had an assigned task and address. Imagine the Hoosier cabinet expanded into a room, then compressed again until almost no movement remained. Schutteliotsky later remarked that she had not been much of a cook when she designed the kitchen most closely associated with her name. It sounds like a punchline, but it also explains the project. She approached cooking as a design problem rather than a personal ritual. The Frankfurt Kitchen was brilliant space engineering. It was also narrow enough for one worker. Its efficiency reinforced the expectation that one woman would cook alone, separated from the rest of the household. Some residents resisted its unfamiliar organization. The same room could be progressive and restrictive. It reduced movement while encoding who was expected to move. One of the strongest ideas survived in Finland. And it makes the countertop dish rack look strangely primitive. During the 1940s, Maiju Gebhard, pronounced Maiju Gebhard, worked with the Finnish Work Efficiency Institute. She studied the repetitive labor of drying dishes by hand. Her solution needed no motor, no heating element, and no app sending a notification when the plate was dry. She put open-bottom dish racks inside the cabinet directly above the sink. Washed plates went into storage while still wet. Water fell through the racks into the basin. Gravity did the drying, the counter stayed clear, and the towel lost one of its jobs. This is specialization at the point of use in its purest form. Open plate racks existed in European and American kitchens long before the 20th century. They provided storage and display, and sink-adjacent versions could help with drying. Gebhard's contribution was the modern Finnish dish draining cabinet. Storage and drying merged into one permanent system. Its American relative was the integrated drainboard sink. Porcelain enamel cast iron sinks, and later steel cabinet sink units, often included a ribbed surface sloping toward the basin. Water went back where water belonged. The construction was simple. Cast iron supplied mass and rigidity. Porcelain enamel created a hard, stain-resistant surface. Surviving examples can still function after many decades, but virtually indestructible is nostalgia doing copywriting. Enamel can chip, and exposed iron can rust. A century-old sink still working today proves that particular sink survived. It tells us nothing about the cheap sinks that failed, were discarded, and never reached an antique shop. That is survivorship bias. History's product review section contains mostly the products still available for review. Apron front sinks followed the same working logic. Their large basins accommodated bulky cookware and substantial quantities of water. The exposed front can let the user stand closer, avoiding the countertop edge. Yet ergonomics depends on basin depth, installation height, cabinet projection, and the user's body. A very deep sink may simply exchange pressure against the stomach for pain in the back. Even the trash container fits this system. A pull-out bin near the preparation surface is useful, not merely because the garbage becomes invisible, but because it shortens the route from cutting board to waste. A good modern version needs removable washable containers. Otherwise, concealment becomes a small cabinet dedicated to odors. Food storage is where vintage advice turns into a mixture of sharp observation and confident mythology. Bread does not become stale only because it dries out. Much of staling comes from starch molecules reorganizing after baking, a process called rétrogradation, pronounced rétrogradation. Refrigeration accelerates that process, so ordinary bread can stale faster in a refrigerator than at room temperature. For long storage, freezing is usually better. A bread box manages a compromise between moisture and ventilation. It can limit excessive drying while allowing enough airflow to reduce condensation. For crusty artisan bread that may preserve texture better than a sealed plastic bag. A bread box is not mold-proof. Warmth and humidity can still support mold, and a plastic bag is not automatically wrong. Sealed packaging slows moisture loss and can keep soft sandwich bread from hardening. Put warm bread into that bag, trap condensation, and you have built a studio apartment for mold. The right storage depends on the loaf. Crusty bread benefits from some ventilation. Packaged sandwich bread often performs well in its original wrapping. Bread needed weeks later belongs in the freezer. The refrigerator is frequently the worst compromise. Colder bread, faster staling, and no particular sense of achievement. Tin-lined bread drawers offered a dedicated environment and helped exclude insects. Small vents could manage airflow. The tin itself did not stop mold because metal is not an exorcist. Temperature, moisture, cleanliness, and bread type still mattered. Specialized vegetable drawers rested on another sound idea: darkness and ventilation. Potatoes should be kept cool, dark, and ventilated. Light causes chlorophyll to form, producing the familiar green color. Chlorophyll itself is not the toxin. The concern is that greening, sprouting, and damage may accompany increased glycoalkaloid, pronounced glycoalkaloid. These include solanine, pronounced solanine, and chaconine, pronounced caconine. A severely green or bitter potato should be discarded. A potato drawer beside an oven defeats the purpose. Darkness helps, but heat accelerates sprouting and deterioration. The compartment also needs airflow, along with regular inspection. Onions deserve their own dry, ventilated section. Potatoes and onions often end up together because both look like produce that has accepted a permanent beige wardrobe. Under household conditions, though, storing them together can accelerate deterioration. Separate compartments had a more defensible design. Then there was the larder. A historical larder was not merely a large cupboard painted dark green with brass handles. Before universal refrigeration, it was deliberately cool. It was often placed on the shaded side of the house and ventilated outside. Some had stone or slate shelves. A modern pantry inside a heated house may provide excellent organization, but that does not make it a cool larder. The old feature depended on architecture, climate, and airflow. Strip those away, and the larder becomes branding. One invention weakened the need for many of these systems. In 1930, electric refrigerators were present in roughly 8% of American households. By 1950, the figure was around 80%. Today, they are nearly universal. In 2 decades, the refrigerator went from rarity to standard equipment. It did more than replace the icebox. It helped erase cool larders, changed food shopping routines, and reduced reliance on daily delivery. That is where the milk door enters. Some houses had pass-through compartments in an exterior wall. A delivery worker placed glass bottles inside from outdoors, and the household retrieved them from the kitchen side. It was an Amazon locker before Amazon, except many examples were simple boxes rather than sophisticated interlocked security systems. Home milk delivery depended on regular urban routes, reusable glass bottles, and a retail system built around frequent service. Household refrigerators, supermarkets, automobiles and paper cartons changed that economy. The milk door did not fail. Its supporting network disappeared. The principle could return as a secure grocery portal. A modern version would need insulation, weather sealing and temperature control where perishables are involved. It would also need one-time access for delivery. Adding a smart lock to an uninsulated hole in the wall is not innovation. It is a technologically advanced warm box. If you saw our episode on the 1950s supermarket, this is the missing architectural half of that story. New retail systems change not only what Americans bought, but where houses expected food to enter. It brings us to an American range that behaved almost like it was violating the normal rules of appliances. John E. Chambers developed heavily insulated gas ranges designed to finish cooking after the gas was switched off. Chambers instructed users to preheat the oven, place food inside, turn off the flame, and let retained heat complete the process. The company turned insulation from an invisible construction detail into the main feature. Picture it. The burner clicks off. The flame disappears. The kitchen grows quieter. But the oven walls remain hot, surrounding the food with stored energy. Dinner keeps cooking inside a machine that appears to have stopped. Some Chambers models included the Thermowell, pronounced Thermowell, a heavily insulated, slow-cooking compartment. It allowed meals to cook gradually with limited active heat. In modern language, Chambers treated thermal mass like a battery. No touchscreen, no subscription, and no firmware update to make the chicken available again. The engineering was real, but it required appliance-specific instructions. An unrestored vintage gas range can have unsafe valves, poor combustion, inadequate ventilation, or carbon monoxide risks. Its still lights is not a professional inspection. That distinction matters. Durability tells you whether the object remains physically present. Safety tells you what happens when fuel enters it. Warming drawers belong here too, though not in the period where nostalgia usually puts them. Dedicated domestic warming drawers became much more visible in premium appliance lines later in the 20th century. They are useful for staggered meals, warm plates, and some dough-proofing applications when the manufacturer supports them. Cooked food cannot simply remain vaguely warm. Modern guidance generally calls for hot holding at 140 degrees Fahrenheit or 60 degrees Celsius and above. A drawer set to cozy is not a food safety standard. Pot filler need an historical correction as well. Wall-mounted articulated faucets are useful when filling large pots, but evidence that they were common in ordinary American kitchens from the 1920s through the 50s is weak. They are better described as specialist or later luxury features. They solve only half the heavy pot journey anyway. The faucet fills the pot at the stove. It does not drain the pasta afterward. Dual shut-off valves reduce risk. But if something leaks, there is still no basin below the faucet. A stove alcove has a stronger architectural lineage. Historically, masonry, tile or metal around the stove helped manage heat and fire risk. A modern alcove can organize lighting, ventilation, oils and utensils around the cooking zone. Clearances and fire codes, though, are not optional aesthetic details. The tile may look like a French farmhouse. The combustion physics remain stubbornly local. Then there are the materials people describe as magical. Butcher block is knife-friendly, renewable and repairable. Surface cuts can be sanded away. Proper maintenance usually involves mineral oil or another food contact safe finish, not random cooking oil that may become rancid. Some laboratory work has found that bacteria introduced onto dry wooden surfaces can decline rapidly. That does not make wood self-sanitizing. A neglected counter covered in raw chicken residue will not invoke the ancient antibacterial spirit of maple. It still needs cleaning, drying, and protection from cross-contamination. Porcelain enamel cast iron offers hardness, mass, and stain resistance. It can also chip. Solid wood cabinetry can be repaired one component at a time, assuming the joints and timber remain sound. Replaceable hinges and handles extend the life of the system. One failed moving part does not have to turn the whole kitchen into waste. Korean, pronounced Korean, belongs in this discussion too, although Dupont introduced it commercially in 1967. It is genuinely vintage now. It simply does not come from the same era as the Hoosier cabinet. Solid surface can be joined with visually inconspicuous seams, and many scratches can be sanded out. Hot cookware can damage it, while dark colors may show wear more clearly. Its value is not indestructibility. Its value is that certain damage can be repaired. That is the difference between durable and immortal. Durable materials expect maintenance. Disposable materials pretend maintenance is unnecessary because replacement is already part of the business model. When we compared period catalogs with modern renovation claims, one pattern stood out. Vintage objects were not universally superior. The best examples used thick repairable materials and mechanically understandable parts. Weaker products vanished, leaving the strongest survivors to represent the whole century. We explored the same survivorship problem in our episode on post-war appliances. The refrigerator still running after 70 years is compelling. The thousands that failed in 1963 are much less available for filming. A kitchen is not merely a machine though. It is a social room. And here, the old and new systems genuinely disagree. The breakfast nook used fixed benches and a fitted table to create seating without the circulation space demanded by chairs. Storage could fit beneath the seats. Near a window, it became an informal place for meals, homework, and household planning. The kitchen desk was a later relative. In many post-war and late 20th century homes, it held a telephone, calendar, bills, and recipe files. It was the family command center before the family command center, required 6 chargers and a password manager. Many became clutter traps. Fixed desk heights and shallow knee space were not designed for hours of computer work. A modern version needs proper ergonomics and protection from heat, grease, and spills. The laptop may be thin. Coffee remains three-dimensional. The larger argument is whether the kitchen should be open or closed. A closed kitchen contains noise, heat, smells, grease, and dirty dishes. During formal entertaining, the door hides the work. The person preparing dinner, though, can become isolated behind that door. An open kitchen improves communication and sightlines. A caregiver can cook while supervising children or speaking with guests. The trade-off is that every pan becomes part of the living room decor, and the range hood supplies the soundtrack. Neither arrangement wins every time. The strongest answer is often a hybrid, a glazed door, partial wall, or pocket partition. It opens for social contact and closes when the blender begins negotiating with the ice. Pocket doors are especially useful because they disappear into the wall instead of consuming floor area with a swing. The mechanism costs more and requires careful construction, but it lets one space change modes. Open when cooking is social, closed when someone burns garlic. This brings us to the final promise, the hidden room that allows a kitchen to be open and closed at once. Historically, the butler's pantry and the scullery were not the same room. A butler's pantry sat between the kitchen and dining room. It stored tableware, silver, beverages, and serving equipment. Some silver drawers used tarnish-inhibiting fabric known as Pacific silver cloth, not merely soft decorative lining. The scullery handled dirty work. Washing dishes, cleaning cookware, and rough preparation happened there. It was the backstage area. The main kitchen did not have to perform every function in one camera-ready space. Modern real estate language blends both rooms into the butler's pantry, prep kitchen, or back kitchen. The names change because luxury scullery sounds like a premium place to be assigned punishment. Picture a modern party. Guests gather around the island, food arrives through a side opening, behind a pocket door, pans, packaging, dirty glasses, and the loud dishwasher accumulate around a secondary sink. The main room stays social because cleanup has an address. A compact modern version could include a small sink, a dishwasher or landing zone, an appliance garage, recycling, compost storage, and ventilated shelves for bulk goods. The door contains noise and clutter. The arrangement follows the same point of use framework we started with. It need not become a full second kitchen. Building 2 complete kitchens increases cost, energy consumption, and cleaning labor. One design solution can quickly turn into a recurring maintenance subscription. A service wall, 5 or 6 feet wide, can capture much of the benefit. Give dirty dishes a landing surface, put waste below. Add a pocket partition. The principle matters more than the square footage. Think back to the opening paradox. In 1950, the average new American single-family house measured about 983 square feet. In 2023, it measured about 2,411 square feet, roughly 2.5 times as much. Average household size moved in the opposite direction, from around 3.4 people to roughly 2.5. In broad terms, new house floor area per household member rose from under 300 square feet to more than 950. Our houses did not become too small for specialized features. In many cases, they became larger, while storage became less specific. We gained islands and walk-in closets, then bought plastic organizers because the architecture no longer knew where the wet plates belonged. Which features deserve the strongest comeback? The overseeing draining cabinet eliminates a repeated task through gravity. The integrated drainboard controls water without occupying the counter with another object. Dark ventilated separate produce storage can protect potatoes and onions when positioned away from heat. A removable pull-out workboard gives small kitchens temporary preparation space. A compact scullery or cleanup pantry gives the open kitchen a backstage. The framework has limits. Specialization can harden into inflexibility. The Frankfurt Kitchen reduced the steps while confining one worker. A closed room controls noise while isolating the cook. A dedicated drawer solves storage until the family's habits change, and nobody remembers what the drawer was dedicated to. All of those perspectives can be true at once. All kitchens were not universally better. Modern kitchens are not universally smarter. The best historic features solved repeated physical problems. The worst preserved outdated assumptions alongside the floor. A wet plate slides into the cabinet above the sink. Water falls silently into the basin. No towel is required. No motor runs. No app requests permission to send notifications. One ordinary annoyance was observed, understood, and given a permanent answer exactly where it occurred. That was the real treasure in the vintage kitchen. Not pastel paint, not brass handles, not the belief that every object becomes superior after surviving long enough to appear in an antique store. It was the habit of noticing a repeated inconvenience and giving it a home. Which would change your daily routine most? The Finnish draining cabinet, a removable breadboard, or a compact cleanup pantry? The most interesting answers are rarely about style. They are about the task people are tired of repeating. I'm Alex. The smartest kitchen comeback is not making the room look old. It is making every inch answer a real human task.